Back now.
So that should all be, hopefully the volume's good.
I think it is. Ready?
Yes.
Gonna lay down my sword and shield down by the riverside, down by the riverside, down by the riverside. I'm gonna lay down my sword and shield down by the riverside. Study war no more. I ain't gonna study war no more. I ain't gonna study war no more. Ain't gonna study war no more, no more. I ain't gonna study war no more. I ain't gonna study war no more. Ain't gonna study war no more.
I'm gonna stick my sword in the golden sands.
Down by the riverside, down by the riverside, down by the riverside.
I'm gonna stick my sword in the golden sands.
Down by the riverside, study war no more. I ain't gonna study war no more. I ain't gonna study war no more. Ain't gonna study war no more, no more. I ain't gonna study war no more. I ain't gonna study war no more. Ain't gonna study war no more. I'm gonna talk with the Prince of Peace down by the riverside, down by the riverside, down by the riverside. Gonna talk with the Prince of Peace down by the riverside. Study war no more. I ain't gonna study war no more. I ain't gonna study war no more. Ain't gonna study war no more, no more. I ain't gonna study war no more. I ain't gonna study war no more. Ain't gonna study war no more.
All right, you keep texting your friends to come back in. We were so good on time. I know you can do it. It's like that little engine that could. So keep coming in. Don't go running away. You'll hear from more ministry partners and opportunities. We'll be talking about the cultivation labs that you get to participate in and hear a little bit more on the details of what to experience. This might also be a good opportunity for me to share with you that when you leave your spot, would be good anytime you leave your spot, you just kind of look around and see if there's anything that you could actually pick up and take out and put in the trash. So just look around because there's a lot of volunteers here who will do that but how about we lend a helping hand as these volunteers already work hard. The Lord be with you. And everybody who is still out in the gathering place and has not come in probably should give a free will offering to the Rural Ministry Sustainability Fund. There we go. You are making everybody else be late. It's like, what do they call that? Corporal punishment or something? All right. So move. There we go. All right. So welcome back. It's time for more work for us to do, and our two presenters are right here. At this time, I would invite both Pastor Justin Kozak from Our Saviors, also chair of the Support to Ministry Committee, as well as Annalise Sefrud from the Compensation and Guidelines Task Force, which really is a sub-task force that was established by the Support to Ministry Committee to come up to the podium, which they have already done, and they will be presenting to you discuss compensation and guidelines. Please welcome them to the podium.
Hi, everyone. I have like a cold today, so, that's fun. I have a friend who doesn't really know very much about church and how we do church, and she said, I don't know what a synod is, but it kind of seems like when all your relatives come to your house and judge your furniture. I said, yeah, that's kind of what it is. So thank you for thank you for coming, and I do hope that you're finding yourselves cozy and at home in this place, and it's really good to host you here. So today we have some time to talk about the upcoming year's proposal for compensation and guidelines, and I want to remind you a little bit about how these guidelines are determined. It was the tradition in our synod for a while where the task force that would work on revising the yearly guidelines and making the yearly recommendation was a team that pivoted around the synod. So it would move from conference to conference, kind of like the way we host treats here. So that it's great for hosting treats, and a little bit less good for determining compensation and guidelines, because when you're the new conference, you have no idea where even to start, and it's been years since you last looked in depth at these documents. And let me tell you, there's a lot of depth to these documents, a lot of thought baked into every page, a lot of methodology and rationale, so it takes some work. Over the last couple of years, what we've done is we've shifted to a representational model where folks from across the synod and across across our rostered and lay ministries come together to talk about these issues. So it's folks that live in the rural environment, in the city environment. It's folks that are from big churches and small churches. It's professional clergy types like me, and it's folks that couldn't be farther from that. And it's an intentionally diverse group that is appointed by the Support to Ministries team. And Support to Ministries is the standing committee of the synod that deals with basically everything that has to do with ministry in our synods, and especially around mobility and call and placement, and also how we support individual congregations and how we support their ministers too. So that's why it falls to this team to appoint this review board. And we had, one thing we're able to do with this representational team is to come up with a set of goals that we can return to every year, because we know that in a 60-page document with thought on every page, we're not going to dig into all the details every year. We just can't. So we have like a wish list, and we work through the wish list, and if something comes up that deserves more discussion, hey, we actually get to come back to it next year. And if there's something that maybe that moves to a higher priority list, that we adjust it accordingly. So when we went from 2022 last year from this assembled body, and we came out of the last year's meeting, we had a list of things we wanted to accomplish going into this year. We wanted to review the compensation table for 2024 because that table itself is kind of like on a 2-year review. If you're going to need to update the table itself every single year, but every couple years it needs to be looked at. So the first thing we want to do is review the compensation table for 2024. The second thing we wanted to do is to return to our housing allowance, parsonage allowances, and housing equity contribution. This is a real living conversation, and this is an evolving conversation. We're constantly trying to understand the best way to do housing, the best way to describe housing, and all that sort of stuff. So we haven't closed the book on this one yet, but we continue to talk about it. We talked about the parental and family leave policy, and you'll hear our recommended change. And we talked about pulpit supply rates, which hadn't been changed in our synod in 42 years. I don't know, it was a really long time. So we revisited pulpit supply rates because that's in compensation and guidelines, but it's buried deep in there, and by the time you get to looking at that page, you're tired. You're just like, I don't even care about it anymore. So this year we spent some time caring about that, and that's as far on our wish list as we got. So now, if you're one of these remarkable synodically authorized ministers we have, or if you have come into the ministry with carrying a bunch of experience from a different job or from previous ministry experience, if you're dealing with healthcare costs, like we know that these are issues, and we knew that these belong to the compensation and guidelines conversation going forward, so they're in the parking lot for when we return to them after this year. You with me so far? Okay, so now what we're going to do, I'm going to turn it over to my colleague Annalise, and she's going to walk through some of the specific changes, and really we're using this time to talk through the specific changes that we have for this year's proposal, and here's Annalise to tell you a little bit more.
Thank you. I was part of the Prairie Coteau that got assigned this task for the 2021 Synod Assembly, and Pastor Justin Negemauer and I looked at each other like, what are we supposed to do? And then as we came out of that, the Support to Ministries Committee made this subcommittee. Last year, we kind of went in, got to know each other. This is now our second year. We've got a group. There's some people leaving, some new people coming in, carryover. And so it's going to become some continuity. And topics that we couldn't get fully covered this year will be at the top of the list next year. Some of these ones will kind of we did it, check it off, come back and look at it in 2 or 3 years from now. So this year we have several recommended changes to the guidelines, and they were provided in the pre-assembly materials, and those should be, most of them are, I tried to highlight them yellow. The first one is the parental leave. I think it was back in 2016, the word maternity got changed to parental leave. What we looked at this year was the length of that leave, and felt that 6 weeks was a little short, and so our recommendation is to take it to 8 weeks of parental leave. A clergy couple are both eligible to receive this benefit. And we kind of put a 1-year time limit on it, saying just because you gave birth, or if you're a man, your wife gave birth, and it might not be suitable for you to take that 8 weeks of leave immediately. Each congregation, each situation is a little different, that maybe a pastor says, you know what, my baby's an infant, month 2 to month 4, I can do a fair amount of pastoral care, but when I hit 6 months, that's when I would like more of my leave. But we put a 1-year kind of time limit on it so that congregations don't feel this is hanging out forever. As far as the lay staff portion of this, we're highly recommending that congregations make policy and leave for lay staff comparable to their ministers. It's not in it specifically. But so we're recommending a change from 6 to 8 weeks of parental leave. The next area that we looked at was pulpit supply. And nobody in our group can remember the last time this was updated. It hides in Appendix F on like page 25 of 26 pages in the guidelines. We've brought it forward to the Sabbath and time off just to bring your attention to it, and we updated the amounts a little bit. that for a single service pulpit supply, we're recommending an increase from $175 a service to $225. But we've dropped a second service from $75 to $50. But we've added, what if that service is on a different day? If you're a Saturday and a Sunday, that is a bigger commitment than doing 2 services on a Sunday. And so that's where we put in, if there's a second service not on the same day, $150. Then as we were discussing this, it came up that some of our congregations, mine included, pastor's not available, a lay person leads the service, but the pastor provides a recorded sermon. So it's not quite full pulpit supply, but it's more, it's something that you have a person filling in and doing worship leader role. And so we added that for congregations to be mindful so that you're not asking members to do things for free just because. And then for our confirmation and visitation, we increased those. Confirmation was at $75 per preparation, and we're recommending an increase to $100 per confirmation preparation, and that for visitation services to increase it from $20 to $30 an hour. So it looks like a whole lot on pulpit supply. I'll admit, when I became treasurer and saw that on the budget, I'm like, are we really spending that much on candles every year? And somebody had to explain, no, it's supplying the minister when they're gone, not the candles. Yeah, my children, they're like, oh, mother. Okay, next one is the housing equity contribution. This is targeted for congregations that have a parsonage. If you have a minister living in your parsonage, they are not gaining the equity in a house that normal people do. And so the purpose of this is so that when they either leave a parsonage or retire from the ministry, they have funds available to put on a down payment on a house later in life. And previously, it was $125 a month, which is $1,500 a year, and we are recommending an increase to $150 a month or $1,800 a year. And the double asterisks at the bottom, we will all, throughout the guidelines, check with your tax advisor. Be careful where you put this money. We had a case where the minister put it at Portico, and it went in his retirement fund. And when he left a parsonage and bought a house, it's an early penalty withdrawal from retirement. So check with your tax advisor. You'll hear it repeatedly. Portico can help you with that. They deal with all kinds of things like that, but just be aware. Now the big one, the salary table. We are recommending a 5%, back up, sorry, I jumped ahead. I forgot a slide. Housing allowance for no parsonage. This is not a recommended change. This is a verbiage change. It's a highlight. The top portion, the South Dakota Synod, if there's not a parsonage, pay your pastor the actual cost of housing. And previously it said a recommended 50% of base salary to reach the appropriate allowance. We've made a slight tweak to the verbiage that the South Dakota Synod recommends that the housing allowance should be the actual cost. This housing allowance will get discussed every year, I think. We could not come up with a neat, clean solution. We are in a synod that varies from rural Isabel, Belle Fourche, Timber Lake, to Rapid City, Sioux Falls, Huron, and Watertown. We can't make one set guideline rule for all of the different congregations to follow. So these are guidelines and recommendations, but I would say make your pastors whole in their housing. Okay, next recommendation, now we're at the salary table. 5% increase. This comes after a 4.5% recommended increase last year. On the newly ordained rostered minister, the recommended amount is $41,212. That's an increase of $1,963, or $164 per month, or $38 per week. On our salaried lay leaders, the same 5% increase has a starting base of $35,832. And for the hourly staff, it takes it to a base of $13.13. And half my brain hates that number. Why is it not 13 or 13.25? And the other half of my brain loves it. It's 13.13. They're both prime numbers. So you can choose which brain you live in. I have competing number brains. Okay, next slide. Why a 5% increase this year? We discussed back and forth. We were up at a 10% increase at one point. We are coming off an 8.7 cost of living increase to Social Security that was enacted in January of this year. And we did a 4.5% increase last year. The predicted cost of living increase for Social Security for 2024, 7 months from now, when we were making these decisions in January, we were a full year out of when these guidelines will take effect. The predicted cost of living is 2 to 3%. Inflation is still there, but it has come down. And our task force and committee has made a multi-year commitment to elevate the rostered ministers, the lay staff of the South Dakota Synod. Because the bad news is, as you'll see on the next slide, we did not move up the chart. In fact, we moved down 1 slot. In comparing to our neighbors in the upper Midwest, last year we were sitting in the number 8 slot, and darn eastern North Dakota, Fargo Grand Forks, did a 6% increase and moved ahead of us. But the good news, between western North Dakota to us, is right at $700. So we're in the ballpark. We are in the ballpark, but we are lagging our neighbors in the upper Midwest. And I would like to see us move up higher on that list next year. Now, watch eastern North Dakota do another 6 or 7% increase, and we can't do anything about that. But so these are the recommendations that are being brought to the Assembly that will be voted on tomorrow. Thank you.
Thank you, Pastor Justin and Annalise. So you take all these words, all these thoughts with you, and when it comes to a vote tomorrow, there will be time to ask questions as we bring this before you for a vote. Those two are around. Pastor Justin promised me not to cough at you with this cold. So if you have questions, please feel free to walk up and have that conversation with them. Thank you for your work, both of you, and we'll have discussion and questions tomorrow. At this time, it's my privilege and honor to welcome Reverend Dr. Aaron Mattson, your Companion Synod Coordinator, to the podium to give you a report on our 2 Companion Synods, which one is Cameroon and the other one is Nicaragua. Please welcome Pastor Mattson.
Right, thank you, Bishop. And stop me if you've heard this one before, this saying, but it's a small Lutheran world, at least here in South Dakota, which means if you go to a Synod Assembly or 2, or a few events, especially as a pastor, you run into the same people a lot of the time. And coming from a good Lutheran family, at least on my father's side, with aunts and uncles all through congregations in South Dakota and other states, they'll say, hey, do you know so-and-so, do you know so-and-so? So, case in point, today my parents are here as delegates. Yes, over there in Prairie Rivers. My in-laws are here somewhere from Prairie Coteau, but they're helping out my wife, who's the pastor at Church on the Street here in Sioux Falls. And a new one for me today, one of my college roommates, Rod, is here from Pierre. So crazy. It's crazy how small the world is sometimes. But it's also, on the other hand, a big world at times too. And that's why Companion Synod ministries are so important. As I get into my report, first of all, I want to thank Bishop Hagmeyer and the City Council for extending this call to me and for the wonderful installation at this morning's services. I want to thank the Companion Synod Committee for their partnership, for attending to the table downstairs in the hub, for attending to the Cultivate Lab, which will happen, that's right, another Cultivate Lab plug here, and for just their partnership in the work together. So a few updates now from Nicaragua and Cameroon. In Nicaragua, first starting there, we were sad a few months ago to see that our missionary there, who's been the missionary for a few years, Pastor Soliet, who many of you might have been able to meet over the years, decided to move on and to a different thing in life. And you heard about YAGM, Young Adults in Global Missions, earlier. She's the YAGM coordinator in Mexico City now. We wish her very well. She was a wonderful missionary. She did great work. She will be very much missed, but we wish her well. And so now we're in the process of working with our partners in Nicaragua and at the churchwide organization to find a new missionary. And I cannot say too much publicly now, but it looks like there's some promising things happening. So hopefully we will have at least someone in place later this year. And maybe we can think about trips down to Nicaragua again, depending on the situation in country. But hopefully we'll at least have a missionary there soon. This past year, a delegation with Pastor Soliet came, since the last Synod Assembly anyways, came here to South Dakota and got to meet some people, got to go to a few congregations, and so that was great. And in January, just a few months ago, a delegation from South Dakota was able to go down to Nicaragua, and I think everybody who went on that trip is here today. So it's wonderful. That's something even more than a financial support, which is very important. They will tell you they love the delegations the most. They can't get enough folks coming down and visiting them. It just means the world to them. And so hopefully soon, again, we can go. One thing I wanted to point out in particular in Nicaragua is this past year, together as the South Dakota Synod, we were there to help out when Hurricane Julia went through Nicaragua. Now, show of hands, how many people heard about this hurricane on the news? Okay, a few people. But I can tell you Jim Cantori from the Weather Channel was not down in Nicaragua with his raincoat and camera crew. A lot of people didn't know about that, but we were there as a South Dakota Synod to help people recover from that hurricane. So thank you, South Dakota Synod, for that. Turning to Cameroon, together again this year, we've been able to help with the support of a lot of school children through the Train Up a Child program. We've been able to help train new pastors through the Lutheran Seminary there. And we've been able to put, the last I checked, 4 new church roofs on buildings, which gives communities a stable, safe place to worship out of the elements. Speaking of church roofs, there is a big news to share on this front. This year is the 100th anniversary of the Lutheran mission in the Sudan region, which includes Cameroon. So it's the 100th anniversary of the Lutheran mission there in Cameroon. To celebrate that, well, we invited Bishop Baigeli from Cameroon to come here, but the visa process just took too long. So we weren't able to get him here for assembly, but hopefully he will be here later this summer and can visit. And if you're interested in having him visit your congregation, please let me know. I will do the best I can to get him everywhere to see all the great and wonderful places in this big, beautiful synod of ours. And also, In July 8th and 9th, in the Twin Cities, there is a big gathering, a centennial celebration at Central Lutheran Church and Luther Seminary. Everyone is invited to come and celebrate the 100th anniversary. Our bishop is going to the celebration. Bishop Igeli will hopefully be there. Bishops from around the country and former missionaries that served in Cameroon and the region will be there. And it'll be a great celebration of the past, but also a great celebration looking forward to the work we can do together to spread the gospel in the Sudan region. Also, I want to thank Prairie Rivers Conference for the challenge they issued. They said they would provide the funding to build one church roof in honor of the centennial celebration, which is about $8,000. And they challenged all the other conferences in the synod, all 7 others, to match that gift. And a couple have so far, said they have, but not everybody has. So our hope is, I should say, by the time Bishop Hagmeyer and I lead a delegation to Cameroon for their centennial celebrations this fall, we will have raised enough to provide 7 new church roofs in Cameroon, which would be a wonderful centennial gift. So if you're interested, yes, please. So if you're interested, again, talk to me. There's more information down in the table for companion synods down in the hub downstairs. And finally, I want to thank you all for the work we do together as the South Dakota Synod with our companion synods. Sometimes, we've kind of heard this, sometimes it can feel like, especially in rural South Dakota, and I grew up in rural South Dakota, so I've been there, you can feel like your faith doesn't really change much, and what we do here doesn't really impact too many people, but I can tell you it does. The work we do together changes lives here in South Dakota, in Cameroon, in Nicaragua, around the world. So thank you all for your prayers, your financial support, and all you do to support the Companion Synod Ministry of South Dakota. Thank you.
Thanks, Pastor Aaron. I am excited to go to Cameroon in October, and I'll be sharing when I come back how that was. It's going to be an experience of a lifetime. At this time, where did Pastor Allen go? He's right there, and he'll be sharing with you maybe a little quiz as well as a report. Welcome, Pastor Allen Blankenfeld, our rural liaison.
Thank you, Bishop. Well, good afternoon. I am excited to see this many people here on a non-election year at a Synod Assembly, so thank you. It shows me that you are truly concerned, as am I, with rural ministry. Just a little background for you. I understand rural, seeing that since I farmed for over 30 years before I was ordained a Lutheran pastor. And I want to thank the bishop and I want to thank the Synod Council for allowing me to do this awesome ministry that I get to be a part of. In the last year and a half, I have been in 15 locations and 27 churches, and it has been a blast. I'm just going to tell you a little bit about what I do, and then we're going to get into a little quiz in just a minute. So the bishop and Pastor Renee tell me where it is I'm going to go. Now, Pastor Dirk and Pastor John, they understand. I'm part of the group now. Their wives tell me where to go. Yeah.
You're welcome, Alan. I'm sure they're glad to share the burden.
Yeah. But no, I usually go to a community where they direct me to go for 10 days to 2 weeks. It kind of varies on my schedule and what's happening in the community. I stay in the community, I spend time lead 2 worship services, and get to know the people and the community. I attend council meetings, confirmation classes, Sunday school classes, you name it. I've probably done it. I've had 5 funerals to date. One of them was for a 100-year-old woman. Another for a gentleman that I knew from my days at SDSU. And the hardest 2 were 2 38-year-old mothers who died of cancer. I have laughed with these people and I have cried with them. But what a privilege to walk with them. I get to do baptisms, First Communion classes, and anything else pastoral that the congregation needs. Now, if you're Facebook friends with me, you understand this. Every time I go out, as the bishop alluded to, I post where in South Dakota is Pastor Allen. And I post some kind of vague pictures, right? And then it's kind of interesting to see what you all guess. Now, some of you, I'm just going to say, in a nice way, aren't real creative. You know, it'll be, well, you're West River. Yep, you're right, you know, but it's fun. But we're going to do something a little reverse today. So I've got some slides of some churches that I've been at. And if you know where that is, shout it out. Yes, St. John's at Hot Springs. Next one. Oh, here's one. What do you think?
Good Hope Lutheran.
Yes, Good Hope Lutheran. You are right. Oh, what's that?
They said, where is it? Clark County.
Yeah, Clark County. You guys over here maybe know. Buffalo, yes, yes. Yes, Rosebud. Rosebud, which is near the town of Shade Hill, South Dakota. Okay, that's just a random picture that I get to experience when I'm driving.
Where do we find the church there?
You know, it's, oh, back up one. Okay, so there was one more. I don't know what happened to it. Oh, well, maybe it'll come up in a little bit. Now you can show the other one. So, you know, this was this winter driving. You are correct. Yes. I was actually heading to Langford Community, and I honestly at one point could not see my grill guard on the front of my truck. And I was talking with a person at Langford, and they're like, what? The sun's shining here, just keep coming. It's like, well, if I could see the road, I would. Okay, next slide, please. There we go, there's my other church. Yes, DeSmit American Lutheran. All right, now the next one is another travel picture. Yeah, that's why I drive the truck that I drive, folks. But before we go any further in pictures, this winter was a long winter, wasn't it? Yeah. And it was filled with challenges, not only for travel, but a lot of challenges within congregations. Because you know as well as I do, if you don't have church, what don't you have? Your offering. Yeah. And it just makes everything all the tighter. And so we understand that. Times are changing. Times are challenging. But we need to not focus on the past, but rather on the future. We don't know what lies ahead, but we trust that the Holy Spirit is directing us. And I want you to know that you're not alone, even on days when you may feel like it. The bishop, the synod staff, and most importantly, Jesus has promised to be with you always. Now, Pastor Shelley Gehring, where are you? There she is, way in the back. So Pastor Shelley came to me with an awesome idea. And I liked it so much, I talked to the bishop about it, and I am thrilled to announce that we're going to go with a new Zoom meeting in South Dakota. Pastor Shelley and I are teaming up on it. It is for rural pastors, for synodically authorized ministers, and for rural lay leaders. That once a month we will be able to come together and to talk. Because so many times, as you well know, as I knew when I was a pastor in small congregations, you're on your own. And it gets kind of lonely. And so later this fall, we want to start this, so watch your e-news, because you will be seeing where to sign up, and then we'll let you know. And we'd like to invite as many of our leaders to come along with us as we can. So I also have the privilege in my position to visit with people who already have a role in their church as to maybe expanding that, to see if lay leaders are willing to take on a little bit more. And I'm happy to say that through what I've been doing, we do have some people that are in seminary. I actually can say there's a couple people who are sitting here in this sanctuary who will be going to seminary. They just might not know it yet. But they will. They will. And so part of my recruiting, I'm just going to show the next slide. The bishop thinks I went a bit overboard here. So in my last trip out, this little guy came up the first Sunday I was there and wanted to help. The second Sunday I was there, I just picked him up and he's helping me preach my sermon here. And I told his folks, this little guy is going to be a pastor one day. But the bishop said I maybe need to refocus on who I'm recruiting, so I will. But one last thing I want to say, and I'd like everybody to know that indeed the bishop, the South Dakota Synod cares about all of you and your churches. It doesn't matter how big or how small. It doesn't matter how many people you worship on a Sunday, we care. And I want you to know that you are never alone. Okay? So, with that, I think I'm just going to end it here. I could go on, but so somebody here, where's Larry at? Right there. Larry Wilski from Our Savior's in Flandreau. That was my last church before taking this call. So we're out having cookies, and Larry goes, "Hey, Pastor, are they putting a time limit on you today?" Thanks, Larry.
Every time, it never fails. I go to the congregation after Alan was there, and they say, "Can we just have Alan?" No. You cannot just have Alan. This was actually a dream that I brought with me from Germany in my heart. Didn't even share it with anybody, but then the Holy Spirit just, because in Germany at the church, that's what the church does. They visit in congregations. And I never really shared it because I thought we can't afford that kind of stuff. Well, got to wait for the Holy Spirit to do the magic. So here we go. Thank you, Alan. Now we're celebrating. We are partying with Kathy McHenry and Lutheran Planned Generosity. Yeah. I have nothing more to say. Welcome, Kathy McHenry.
I'm going to try this. Sorry, guys, in the sound booth if this doesn't work. Sorry, that really literally just came to me like 30 seconds ago, but it felt so appropriate. Okay, so you did hear. Hi, my name is Kathy McHenry. I'm Executive Director of Lutheran Planned Generosity of South Dakota. And we are here today to celebrate. This is the 40th anniversary of planned giving ministry in South Dakota, which is a huge accomplishment. And we were the second synod in the country to recognize that this was important. And I say we, but Bishop Norm Eitram is sitting right over here. Would you stand, Bishop Norm? Bishop Norm and I had, now I had my phone on to play the song, so we're good. Bishop Norm and I had a wonderful car drive together last fall, and we talked about the history of what happened in the synod during his tenure and how he looked around and recognized the need for someone to specifically tell the story of generosity and how people across the synod could support the ministries and the churches that they care about so much in ways beyond their checkbook when the offering plate was passed. And so he had the foresight to create this ministry of the synod. They put out a call for people to apply. And the person that he hired is my hero and the person who started all of this work, Reverend Franklin Pudis, who is also with us today. Pastor Pudis, would you stand for everyone to recognize you, please? It has been such a joy to review the history of this ministry and to read Franklin's notes and the intention that he put into the work that made this ministry what it is today. I tell everyone I strive to those goals, but I don't know if there'll ever be anyone who can recreate the work that he did under Bishop Norm's leadership to create the foundation for what we have today. And so I do want to say with a sincere debt of gratitude, thank you to both of you for paving the pathway for this work that continues 40 years later. It is so appreciated by so many. I also want to extend some appreciation to the 5 ministries that stepped up as partners. This work is supported by all of these ministries together, and the original 5, you'll notice, were the South Dakota district of the American Lutheran Church. It was ahead of the ELCA. I can't say the word today. It's late. The American Lutheran Church Foundation, Lutheran Social Services of South Dakota was one of our very original partners 40 years ago, Lutherans Outdoors and Augustana College at the time. So thank you to all of them for stepping up and saying yes when this invitation was extended. I also found out, this was not in my original plans, that 30 years ago this year was when the South Dakota Synod Council formally established the South Dakota Synod Endowment Fund. This is a fund that supports all of the ministry that you've heard about today. You heard Terry Johnson talk about it in the budget report. The original amount that we started with 30 years ago was a compilation of gifts that totaled $50,347.04. And you can go to the next slide. Perfect. Today, 30 years later, we are at $10,500,000. That gives me goosebumps just a little bit. It's so exciting to watch the impact of that endowment when we talk about all of the ways that ministry is supported every single year with those distributions. And it's because of you and your generosity and your predecessors, people who made a decision when they put their will together, when they wrote a legacy plan, that they decided that church mattered and that they wanted to be a testament to their faith as a part of the work that they did with their estate planning attorney. That it was going to be an example for their children and their grandchildren that I can do something more, that my life really does make a difference. We're also celebrating another anniversary. It just doesn't stop. Everything happened in a year ending in 3, evidently. 20 years ago, Lutheran Planned Giving of South Dakota was created as a more formal partnership of organizations to create this development ministry. We started under the guidance of Bishop Andrea DeGroot Nesdal, and so I believe she's here, and if she is, I'd like her to stand so we can thank her. And then I tell everybody when I started this job, I had to say, I'm the new Jim Shady. Because there was somebody that came and stuck around. Jim, would you come up for just a minute? So Jim served us from 1998 to 2017 in this role and is legendary. I tell everybody when I started, no more coffee, no more wine, but it's one lady to replace 2 men. So Jim was assisted by Kurt Osborne from 2006 to 2017. And I asked Jim to come up for just a minute. I know our time is limited, but Jim also brought greetings from Kurt, who wasn't able to join us today.
As you can tell, Kathy has more hair. You won't confuse us. Starting Lutheran Planned Giving was like getting the keys to a Ferrari. These men over here and the leadership of this synod did all the heavy lifting to get it started. We were able to, Kurt and I were just walked into the shoes and just started sprinting, and it was such a pleasure. I want to also thank Andrea for her work with me, and Joanne Negsted, the late Joanne Negsted. She's the one that bugged me for years to form Lutheran Planned Giving. And then she also asked me to write a grant for Thrivent. And it happened to be that we were the only charity in the Midwest that wrote a grant, and we received $100,000 from Thrivent to market Lutheran Planned Giving in South Dakota. So hug a Thrivent agent if you get a chance someday. And also Bishop Zelmer, who carried on the tradition. You know, one of the things that's beneficial, I know Kathy, you know this, is the acceptance we have because we're in the same crowd as the bishop. And how big that is when you're in congregations. We had the benefit of that for 40 years to be part of that, part of the leadership of this synod. I'm so thankful for it. Some of the leaders at the ELCA was Don Hallberg, Cindy Halverson, and Annette Schumacher. We're all part of that foundations. And I especially want to thank the members of partners of Lutheran Planned Giving for their continued support of this ministry. A word from Kurt. I will always be grateful for the privilege of serving alongside our ministry partners, the Synod staff, the ELCA Foundation, our congregations, and the generous donors who granted us their trust and confidence to help develop the gift plans which have blessed the many ministries of this church. It's been an honor to serve you.
Jim mentioned our current partners, and if you want to go to our next slide, please. I'm going to mention the ones that started 20 years ago with us. You'll notice a long list, and these are the ones, again, who stepped up 20 years ago to say, yes, we want you to expand this ministry, and we want to be a part of it. And so we're so grateful for them. You notice lots of new names that were not part of the original 5. Next slide. Things have changed a little bit. Over the last 3 years, we changed our name and our look. We are now Lutheran Planned Generosity of South Dakota. And that's our focus, it really is to help people understand ways that you can be generous and to recognize that we are all stewards of everything that God has entrusted us with, and that God calls us to use those gifts that we are managers over in ways that advance all of the work that God has in place already and just invites us to join. Our partners today at Lutheran Plan Generosity are a huge reason that I'm able to do this work at no cost to anyone. We don't have any fees, we don't have any commissions, we don't have any minimums. I can't sell you a thing. And that's all because that the coverage for everything that I do in the best job in the Synod is because of these partners that we have today. And so I'm going to name them for you. It's the South Dakota Synod of the ELCA Foundation, Augustana University, Bethesda Lutheran Services in Aberdeen, Heartland Ephatha Deaf Ministries here in Sioux Falls, Lutherans Outdoors in South Dakota has stuck with us for 40 years, as well as Lutheran Social Services of South Dakota. Luther Seminary is a new partner with us from 20 years ago. Prison Congregations of America, the South Dakota Campus Ministry, and St. Dismas of South Dakota. So thank you to all of you, and for the ways that all of you support these ministries in the work that they do. We talked about what's happened with Lutheran Plan Giving and Lutheran Plan Generosity over the last 40 years. That endowment that we talked about now exceeds $10 million and distributes over $400,000 every year to ministry, to scholarships, to seminary debt reduction. That makes a difference in how we are churched together in this state and how pastors are called to serve here. More than $2 million per year is generated because of this ministry and current and planned gifts and endowment investments. I've been here now 6 years, and it's gone fast, and as I said, it's still the best job. I get to talk about dying and taxes and money and religion every single day. You can invite me to dinner. So I want to show you just a little video compilation of some of the stories of what has happened recently with some people that I've been blessed to work with, and the stories of how generosity has impacted their lives and the ministries they choose to serve.
Our treasurer sent me a text and said that the foundation needed to meet regarding a gift of $2,500. And I thought, well, that's wonderful. And our board sat down, and then Judy said that she had made an error, and she opened up this envelope, and instead of $2,500, it was $250,000. And we were just, we just looked at it like, this is just amazing. It came from the attorney who represented the estate of Donna M. Schunman. And they looked at each other and they said, who is Donna Schunman? And I thought the only person that is close to that age is a woman who was at the assisted living center in Sistons. I said, do you know this person here? And she said, oh my, that family was so poor. And they had nothing, she said. We just were stunned by that, you know, that someone who had so little in life then gave back to the congregation that she was raised in with so much.
I had a plan all along that we had to have a plan for retirement. You know, I'm a planner. If there's a template available to us through the church, it was a great place to start. We had a tremendous amount of assets, and how do we convert those assets into a retirement plan for us, and how does that work in with our belief in stewardship? And what we have used substantially is the trust fund through the ELCA with their partners. One of the charities that's on our list is Luther Seminary. We see the need to develop those new pastors, and that's exciting to me. It's been a good, positive experience. And I like the idea that we're working with a staff and a group that has more in mind than just creating wealth. We're creating a better life for lots of people in lots of ways.
My story goes back a long time, back to when I out of college, and my mother and grandmother had encouraged me to look at ministry, ordained ministry as a vocation. And so I made trips up to the seminary to visit the seminary. I went up twice, and I came back twice. Didn't feel that call to ministry. And so my life went forward. Nancy and I got married, and our family started, and our vocations went in different directions. We started a small business and a vineyard and winery, and when the neighbor's land sold across the road from us for a ridiculously high price, we believed that ours had gone up equally. And so we thought about how could we use this gift to us that we did really nothing for except buying it, and it appreciated in value. And how could we use this gift to further of things that we want to support as ministry? When I worked in state government, I was the administrator for the inheritance tax for the state of South Dakota. And we saw how miserably people plan for the end of life and how families just explode because mom and dad never talked to the kids about what was going to happen when they're gone. Through the use of a charitable remainder trust, we were able to transfer undivided interest of the property into a charitable trust and retaining some of it ourselves. And we were able to use the tax benefits of transferring assets into that trust to minimize the taxes that we would owe it on it. This trust pays us income for as long as Nancy and I live. There'll be a beneficiary amount which will go to the ministries we've been talking about, the ministries that we want to support.
You know, I was excited to have a privilege to give back, and I think both of our parents taught us the importance of generosity. I knew about that gift very early on in my life. When God has blessed you, you give back.
Initially, we had a small cabin on Lake Ponce when the kids were very little, and we spent a lot of time with our family there and had many good memories.
Well, we both came from very humble beginnings, and we've been blessed beyond our wildest imaginings. And part of that blessing is that we inherited from our parents not land and not farms and not money, but a work ethic.
With help from Lutheran Planned Giving, we gave it to the ELCA Foundation and established a donor-advised fund. We could distribute the proceeds to a number of different organizations and still maintain the tax advantage of doing that. We're actually giving proceeds to areas that we have already been concerned about and invested in, but this allowed us to do something considerably more than what we would normally be giving.
We hope with our gifts that will make an impact on individuals so that they can turn around and help others. You know, it's not about us, it's about others.
With the help of gifts through Lutheran Planned Generosity of South Dakota, First Call pastors serving South Dakota churches have received more than $1 million over the past 20 years.
The South Dakota Synod is committed to seeing First Call pastors succeed, not just in ministry, but also in the area of their personal finance through the debt reduction program. It represents the support and care of a community, the generosity of individuals, and the opportunity to freely serve for years to come.
The South Dakota Synod is leading the way in fostering a new generation of pastors with this program. I was just recently given the news that my seminary debt was entirely cleared. I'm so grateful to all the generous donors who have sponsored grants that have provided my family peace of mind. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you for your gifts and your continued support of our South Dakota Synod leaders and congregations. Thank you for making a difference. I know it's the end of the day, and I apologize. I could not cut it any shorter than that. Those 5 stories are what makes this job so great. So I'm inviting you. We are hoping that we can create or document 40 legacy plans between now and the end of the year to celebrate this 40 years. I think there would be nothing more fitting to honor Bishop Norm and Reverend Franklin Putis than to assure them that the work goes on and that we are all committed to the future of this church, however it looks, wherever we serve, and whatever God leads us into. So I would invite you to stop down to our table downstairs. I've got a card that you can sign to let me know that you want to be part of the 40 plans for 40 years. And thank you again for all the ways that you continue to support. I can't tell you what a blessing it is to come into this place after 6 years and to look forward to as long as we're able to keep doing this together. It'll be great to celebrate another 40 years with someone else, whoever that looks like. We do have a Cultivate Lab out by the coffee. It'll be the shortest walk to any of them probably. So I hope I get to see a few of you later. Thank you all so very much.
Well, there was the challenge, so you can join my husband and me in making a legacy plan. Please, that's 39 more to go. See Kathy for any further plans. At this time, we come to the part, and there's going to be birthday cake later on with the meal, provided by Lutheran Plan Generosity. We also would like a picture later, Kathy, so don't forget to take pictures of all our honorees that are here for Lutheran Plan Generosity. Time for cultivation labs, and you may wonder, I already had inquiries, well, where do we go? Well, it's all up on there. Just a quick, I know we're running late, but if you're wondering, remember Pastor Kari Webb, the e-learning and resource hub. If you want to learn more about how to get online to learn wherever you are, please meet her. She'll be right here. Lutheran Plan Generosity, you just heard Kathy McHenry. South Dakota Rural Ministry, you have Pastor Allen and our two representatives from our partner seminaries, Wartburg and Luther Seminary. They will be in the sanctuary. Companion Synod, there will be not just Pastor Aaron, but members of the committee. They'll be in the lower level fellowship hall. The open door, Pastor Karen Soli and her team will be in the chapel area, which is right out here to your right, a little further down by the food lines. The garden project, is that still on, or is it rained out, or do we know? Well, you'll be meeting at the information desk, and if nobody's meeting you there or taking you anywhere, then you can go to one of the others. That's a collaboration we have with Augustana. And then there is a last one that's called Sprinkles of Grace. It's a pilot project, and it's going to be mini grants that will be given out. We had a generous donor that will be sponsoring these mini grants for the next 3 years, and they are for innovative ministries, especially targeting 0 to 3-year-olds. So Pastor Allen should probably get in that committee as he is recruiting. So this is sharing information about this new grant opportunity through the South Dakota Synod, through this generous grant that we received, how you and your congregation can think about innovative ministry for targeted group of 0 to 3-year-olds. So have at it, my friends. The cultivation labs are scheduled to run until 5:20, and then you will be coming back here for dinner and the evening celebrations, our keynotes, and all of the fun stuff and more music. But we will be blessing the food as it is prepared. I see they're carrying things in already at this time, and therefore I invite Bishop Emerita Andrea to come up and pray us in. Oh. Are there more announcements? No. Okay, it's all you. All right.
Thank you. I just wanted to mention, Jim whispered to me as I was coming up, Kurt Osborne isn't here in person today because he had hip surgery just in the recent days, and he's recovering well, so we remember him in prayers for that to continue, but his coffee is here. So I think that's downstairs in the display area, probably. So I want you to take a deep breath. You're going to remain seated. I'm going to tell you a little story, and then we're going to pray. It's on the theme of cultivation. Shock, surprise. And there might be some people in the room who are anonymously present in the story as I go. One of those people isn't in the room, but he's very much in my mind as we gather. Pastor Gary Westgard died in this past year, and we remembered him at opening worship, and I just kept thinking of him as I prepared this particular story and prayer, and the way he had just such a gift to uplift us when he spoke and in his writing with stories and thoughts of prayer, cultivating hearts and ministries today. He was a master cultivator to me and an optimist, two things I would strive for, but as the story will reveal, probably not there yet. So here's the reflection with your forgiveness, Gary. People sitting at an outdoor table on a pleasant May evening. There's food and drink from the garden to sample and sip. There's talk of gardening and call settings and the implied cultivation of both. Soon we move to the gardens that have surrounded us to receive the benefit of thinning a veritable farm field of rhubarb. These others with me that evening seem like seasoned gardeners. These young leaders, knowing what to ask, knowing what to do with these uprooted plants we are all gathering. I, who have seen many more seasons than they, I worry over the roots that I take home that night. How long, O Lord, I think, will they last the night? Will my cultivating be sufficient in your sight, O Master of all creation? It is a night of doubt. These other young sprouts, may I say, they don't know all the failures of my cultivating in past years. Each plant to them is a possibility. Each plant reminds me of its relative, now deceased. Often, in the twinkling of an eye, I'd find myself at a flower bedside, grieving a loss. Fits and starts of ministry, like gardening, can bring forth fruit from the earth and grow and prosper, and can also not flower, not produce, not find their root. People and plants die. They depart apart from our timing and our prayers. I'm on the struggle bus for exploring optimism in my gardening life. The following morning, after bringing home hope in a bag with dirt wrapped around it, I lay my spade to the land that is my backyard. Yet again, I kneel beside the upturned dirt of a new planting site, setting that tender root just the night before pulled from its home and comfort, scattering the seed of promise, watering the thirsty new area with hope and unbidden dreams. I don't want to dream of how these plants will grow anymore, of all that could be here in this tiny acre if this time they did, this small space, now fresh with moisture and generously fertilized. How like ministry, brimming with possibilities, struggling against weeds and pestilence, and persevering through seasons of drought. 1 Corinthians 3, Paul writes, I, Paul, planted, Apollos watered, but God gave the growth. The Bible verse floats unbidden over my backyard planting. Is this how you feel, God? Worrying and praying over your children's cultivating? How many failed plants have you recorded in the great book of life, O Lord? How many whole fields have gone under? How do you keep cultivating, God, when it is all so precarious? Life and death. These fainting rhubarb plants and a couple of languishing raspberry bushes seem to reflect my prayers. This isn't helping them at all. I press on to cultivate, to place root in soil, to water and tend this field before me. And finally done, a deep breath brings a familiar scent. My lilac bush nearby is pouring it on this morning, dousing me in that favorite smell of spring, planted years ago, followed by years of no blooms, just the bush. And now, these later years of abundance. My nose registers hope for the future of these new neighbors to the lilac bush. She will show them, I say. She will walk with them. They are a faith community. They are not alone. They are cultivated neighbors in mission. Let's pray. Thank you, God, for the discipline of cultivating, for the trying, for practicing this art of sowing seed and tending growth. Thank you for the seed of faith that you will bring the harvest, for the growth of hope as new life happens, for the promise of your love tomorrow and every day when today's efforts do not prevail. Thank you, God, for raspberries and rhubarb, for tables in the backyard, for waters of forgiveness and renewal. Thank you for food on our tables, friends and strangers around us, mission beyond our dreams that only you can accomplish, and for hope within us as we cultivate in your world. All God's people said, Amen.
Thank you. Please go to the cultivation labs and we'll see you at about 5:30 for some food.